upcoming, but Amy said, Charles is not going to like that. And this is a really funny film, so I thought I should tell you the story of how this 20 years came to today. In 2002, Charles called us up. We were going to be his distributor of Killer Sheep, and said, you know, nobody's distributing Annihilation of Fish. Can you get it for her? I said, Charles, sure. And so I called up the producers, who were lovely people, and their 5 board of directors, and they said, make a marketing plan and send us a contract. And I spent 3 months on the marketing plan, another long time on the contract, and really elaborate, really positive. And then they got it, they said no. And they said, come back to us. And so another couple of years came by, and I went back to them again, and we couldn't make a deal, and another couple of years. In 2012, that company dissolved, and things happened, which I don't want to talk about, but the company went into bankruptcy. But the state of California was afraid that the original producers were not going to be happy if they sold, even though state of California. So I had to find out about it. And we went to the second command of the U.S. Treasury because his wife was a film archivist. And he found out the lawyer who was involved with the sale of the film. And they called up and said, no, we're not ready to do this yet. The estate's still being dissolved. And another 2 years later, I said, you know, Amy, why don't I call up the state of California again? And they said, funny you should mention it. We're just getting to that point, and we want to see, okay. And so I had to do a plan, I had to make an offer to the state of California, and it had to go to bankruptcy court. And the best part is, it was a black woman judge who was a big fan of Charles Burnett. After 20 years, we finally get a break, and because Charles is so wonderful, we get the film. So I go to the lab, not yet. The lab says, no, you can't have it. I said, I have a state of California decree saying I own the rights to this film and all the materials. And they said, well, that's too bad. And they said, it's owned by these couple of companies. And so I had to do 3 months of research to find out that actually the person who had originally encouraged me, Paul Heller, the producer of the film, it was all his companies. So Kathy, can you stand up, please? Kathy Heller? Kathy said, I will write the letter to the lab. And we finally got the materials, the rights, and everything together. And thanks to a whole lot of people involved, including Nina Shaw is here today, and so many people. Amy will be thanking them. Tonight we're showing you the film.
So May has already thanked some of these people, but we want to thank them too. This restoration, which was a joy to work on in every way, was only made possible thanks to the Film Foundation, the Hobson Lucas Family Foundation, the wonderful UCLA Film and Television Archive, Todd Weiner, May Haodong, Jillian Borders, Roundabout Entertainment, Vincent Perosi, Audio Mechanics, John Polito, and also our distribution partners, Kino Lorber Films. We also wanted to say that we thank our new organization, Missing Movies, which is working to make sure that this doesn't happen to films that are being made now, and that more films that are lost will become available again. And also today, we would like to thank Raquel Gates, who wrote an incredibly moving and beautiful appreciation of the Annihilation of Fish on the Film Comment website. I recommend you read it. But most of all,
Who's this again?
we want to thank Charles Burnett. We've been working with Charles for more than 20 years, and his films and his friendship have changed our life. And now you're going to have one more film change yours, so enjoy.
When I started as a film archivist almost 20 years ago, Dennis and Amy were the two people who encouraged me to do this work. So thank you, Dennis and Amy. I'm so glad you're here. And now for our conversation. Tonight we are joined by two unique talents. Why we're all here. Elvis Mitchell is a film critic, author, television host, and filmmaker. He's hosted KCRW's Treatment since its creation in 1996 and recently won the NAACP Image Award for creating and producing The Blacklist, a documentary series for HBO. Charles Burnett is a filmmaker with over 24 titles to his name. His films Killer of Sheep and To Sleep with Anger were named to the National Film Registry, and he is the recipient of many accolades, including a MacArthur Fellowship and an Honorary Academy Award. Please join me in welcoming Elvis Mitchell and Charles Burnett.
Well, there's so much to talk to you about, but this particular movie does so much and so many things. And my understanding is it was written by a Jamaican who's not a black person. Talk about how you met Tony and how the script all came together.
Well, I met Tony through Paul Heller, and Paul had been working for a while, excuse me, to try to get the film made. And I must say that Paul was really a great person to work with, and Tony Winkler was also an exceptional person, and they made it very comfortable and pleasant to work with. Plus the cast and crew and things like that, because we're very fortunate to have a lot of gifted people working on the film, and made it very, very easy. You know, Lynn Redgrave, James Earl Jones, Margaret Kerr, and Lyndon Charles, and so we had a perfect mix of people, a lot of creative thought, and I must thank Kathy Heller for. She's been terrific, and her husband Paul has been just an exceptional person, again, to work with.
But it's such a. Let's thank the Heller's Police for helping to make this thing happen. But this is such a remarkable movie because it has so many big emotional swings in it. I mean, the first 10 minutes alone, you take, since I don't want to give too much away, but there's so much that goes on in the first 10 minutes of the film with Fish, with that character. I want to ask you about staging that because it's really compelling stuff. And the movie changes tone so often. How did you pull this thing off? Because it's a really a remarkable thing to see.
Well, I think we had a really good script, and we have some of the best actors in Hollywood, and so it made it very simple, actually, in a way. I just followed their lead, you know. It was all on paper, and they brought it to life, you know. And you know, we had rehearsal time that they explored a lot of the dimensions of the character, and again, it sounds simple because we had good people working on it.
Okay, you're a genius. You can say it sounds simple. But most of us have not won a MacArthur grant or have made such remarkable films. And your films are all about feeling. I mean, there's certainly story, but you know, we're in the moment with those characters every time we see one of your movies. I want to ask you about talking to the cast, about meeting with James Earl Jones, and because the title says a lot. Not everything, but it says a lot. So your first conversation with James Earl Jones about playing this.
Well, excuse me. Okay.
Oh gosh, there's usually water with these things. There we go.
Yeah, sorry. No, he was, James is, I should say, he's still around. You know, he's an actor. And it's good to work with actors who want you to help them get to a certain point. you know, it wasn't any kind of conflict or anything like that. If it's something we didn't understand or didn't agree with, which was very rare, you know, we would work it out, you know, and he had a lot of ideas, you know, so it was a matter of saying that works perfectly for this thing, you know, and, you know, so there was that, and Lynn Redgrave the same way. I mean, she was always there wanting to know, how can I help you get what you want, you know, and so she would give me examples and say, is this, you know, and we had this way of signaling each other, like saying, or, you know, a nod or something like that. And so we had this little code or something that sort of like alleviated a lot of discussion or something like that, but it was very specific and meaningful, and she had all this wealth of characters and stuff you can choose from, you know. So it's a matter of just picking and saying, yeah, I think that's perfect, you know. I think it works.
But and then this really is a three-hander, because Margot Kidder is just as important as they are, and what's really interesting is that she really knows how to read these people in a way that nobody else does, and it becomes this kind of magical place once they go into her house. And what you talk about, there's so much intimacy in her scenes with those actors. What was the rehearsal time like for this?
You know, you don't have much rehearsals on low-budget films. A lot of rehearsal time. You know, you come in the morning. You know, you rehearse the actors for maybe 25 minutes, and they go into makeup.
25 minutes?
Well, yeah, you know, we had a low-budget film, and we had a schedule to meet, and so you really don't have time to really rehearse that you really would like to rehearse the time. And so it's a matter of getting in there and saying, okay, let's shoot this before you go into makeup and stuff like that. I mean, let's rehearse this before you go into makeup. They rehearse it for about 15 minutes or so. And then they, you know, go into rehearsal, you come back and they rehearse it again, and then you shoot it. That's...
Oh my God, this is...
I think most independent films go in that direction, go like that. It's all about saving money and time and so forth. And so, but they were professional and well trained, where it wasn't a difficult task to do, to shoot, because they already had a lot of material at their disposal, you know. And they just reached in their grab bag and said, well, let's try this, you know, and we would do it and it would work. Or we would try it again and again.
Because there's a scene early on where Fish is being walked out of the institution. Mm-hmm. I just want the audience, let you guys know, to watch the reaction of people as he's leaving, which is just extraordinary, just to watch the impact he's had on this place, and that as he's walking out. You talk about having no rehearsal time. I mean, I saw this movie 25 years ago, and that scene stuck with me still.
Well, I don't mean we didn't have any rehearsal time.
No, but you're saying 25 minutes is
it's
basically almost none.
Yeah, because you had to make the day, you know, so you can't, you know. And we had, the biggest problem we had was finding a house. That was the biggest problem. It wasn't so much a problem, but it was difficult because we had to look for a specific house, you know. And we found it in Echo Park. And Paul and I went driving around before we started shooting, before we got the money for production. We just spent those days that we didn't shoot and didn't have the money, but waiting for it to happen, to scout around Echo Park and find a house that fitted for what we needed.
I guess though, as you're talking about this, because I was just thinking too about how once they move into that house, the light changes in the movie, and it becomes a different kind of place. And as you're reading that script, what is it saying to you about what that house is supposed to feel like? Because you found the place that looked the way you wanted it to look, but it also has a feel for us too as we're watching it.
Yeah, it has to have this particular character that fits, you know, Margot Kidder's character and James Earl Jones, because they're the ones who the house affects them in a way, at least particularly James Earl Jones' character, you know. So what he does in the house has to seem appropriate and real. So, and so that was the thing, because, you know, comedy is so difficult, you know, does it work, you know, and then if it fails, it fails. So that was a worry. So we had to be very precisely what we wanted from the scene, and their performance.
But it is precise, though. I mean, because there are so many big scenes at the beginning of the movie. There's a big church scene that's really powerful too, and because we're expecting almost a kind of a stereotypical thing to happen inside of a black church, and you take us somewhere very different, and but you give it that feel that it's a comfortable place. And so much this story is about people having comfort taken away from them. And I wanted to ask you about how you arrived at that way of making us feel like we feel that sense of ease at the very beginning, and then the rug is pulled off under us, and that happens a lot in the movie.
Well, I think, again, refer to the actors and what they bring to it. You have these choices they give you, and it works. And so that's the main thing, is creating an environment, a situation where they can dig down and give you what is needed, in a sense. And so I was, again, very lucky to get some talented people working on the film, And so I was just very lucky to have a cast, and Paul Heller was responsible for a lot of choosing, helping in the casting, and so it was his film, in a way, than mine, in a sense, because he had spent a while trying to develop this scene. I mean, the story with a different group of people, actors, yeah, and we were really lucky to get James Earl Jones and then Redgrave, because the initial people he wanted, they kept saying, their agents kept saying, well, they read the part or they liked it, So we were waiting for it because they read the part, they liked it. Let's get it done, let's get it made. But just time went on and on and on, and the agent would say, yeah, well, he read the thing and he read the part and they like it. And then they found out that they hadn't read it, and so we had to start over again, but looking for a cast. And luckily, Paul knew personally Lynn Redgrave and things like, and people like that, and invited her to come read for the part, and she was, more than happy to do so. And once that happened, it was tough. It was like downhill after that, in a good way, So. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they're great actors, but I'm sorry to break this to you. You're a great director. And one of the things that you're so phenomenal at doing is making us feel some way about a place. I think about the homes in your movies. I think about To Sleep with Anger, and that we can feel this investment in these places. And I wonder if this is instinctive for you, the way you're able to find a place, because there's so many locations in this spot that feel immediately comfortable to us. And so when something big happens, there's that shock. And I can't think of any other filmmaker who has that kind of gift that you have for finding these places that make us feel so comfortable and at ease. And then something starts to happen that changes our feeling about it. And I wonder if you've always had that, do you think, this instinct for finding places?
Well, I think it developed over the years. You do a film after film and location after location, and you develop a visual sense of what the story's about, And I've always looked at images and gestures and how things are choreographed and what you come up with, In compositions, I was always interested in compositions. And so that part was, and plus I had a great cameraman as well. So I was very lucky in that regard too. And so we got along very well. He would say, "Well, let's look at this way and that way," and we had a good set designer and stuff. And so.
No, I mean, but what I'm saying is, and for me, because I had to prep for this, I want to get ready for this, because I love watching your work, and I'll watch it under any circumstance, but we always, and we can go back to Killer of Sheep, that these places feel like homes. You're talking about having the production designer, the set designer, but there's a way you end up capturing these places. They feel like real homes to us. And that's a rarity to see something in a movie that feels like it's a place that people actually live in. as often as not we watch it go, this looks really cool, and I like the way they put this room together. And for you, I immediately feel like people live in these places, and that's what you want for these stories, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it goes back to this whole reason why you're in film school and why you want to make films, because you want to represent, like I wanted to have narratives that reflect, the things I've seen, my experience, and what it looks like, and let the characters speak for them, the content in a sense, I wanted to put them in a place that they were familiar with and that I knew and I grew up seeing, and so it was a reflection of my sensibilities and what I saw as growing up, and I wanted to duplicate that.
Yeah, because I feel like, and I know we've talked about this before, that's why I wanted to have a chance to talk about it here. You brought something to the movies that we hadn't seen before. Again, a sense of domesticity, a sense of people living in a place, particularly people of color. And it felt and still feels to be welcoming in this way. And as much as your movies, we can talk about the influence of other filmmakers have had on you, the Italian neorealism, that kind of thing, there also feels like it's rooted in your wanting to bring your experience to this. And I think that's what we all respond to in these movies, is that thing that makes your movies idiosyncratic, that we all respond to.
Well, I think it was it was a reaction to a number of things like the black exploitation film and the LA Rebellion tried to achieve, this depiction of life as it is, and so you grew up and looking at these films, you said, that's not me, that's not my existence and the people I know, and so you try to achieve that, work at it, say, no, this is, if you live in the community, this is what you would see, this is how people live. And that's what you want to bring to the screen.
But it's great too, because I wonder when you got the chance to talk to James Joel Jones. I wonder if you talked about working together before. Was this the first time?
First time.
What was the first meeting like with him for you?
It was interesting because, I didn't know that he had a speech impediment as well. And so he was telling me how he got over his speech impediment. So that was the interesting thing about working with him. And so, and also there was a scene where James Earl Jones liked to eat, and I don't mean this in a bad sense, he said that he was a member of this carnivorous club that in Africa that you can eat any kind of meat you want, lion, whatever it is you want, you can order and you get it, And so the funny thing was, in a sense, Lynn Redgrave didn't like curry goat, but James Earl Jones did. And so, but she was really a trooper. She said, I'll eat it. I won't swallow it, but I'll eat it. And we were doing the scene, and this big plate of curry goat, and James Earl Jones just eating away. We're shooting it, and then we'd stop, and so the guy would run up and try to get the plate, so the food would look the same when we started shooting, so there'd be some continuity there. But James would just keep eating during the thing. We kept looking, and so we finally gave up on it. So we had to, fix place for, but he just loved. But Lynn Redgrave would eat it, would scene and be very meticulous about, the size of the plate and everything, and then the amount she would eat, and she would eat just enough to make it work, and then how she spit it out. And but he just remarkable guy. Anyway, that was we had a lot of good time on the production of the film.
I'm glad he's a method actor. What was interesting too is it's seeing, because I remember seeing this and thinking, I know this voice. Oh my God, it's Margot Kidder, who looks and her speaking rhythms are so different in this. Talk to me about talking to her to get her through the movie. And I know you don't direct anybody, but let's pretend that you do. And how you got this performance out of her, how you guys worked on this.
Yes, I'm trying to remember, it's been so long ago. But yeah, again, we rehearsed, and she got the kind of character, you know. I'm trying to think. I didn't have to really be specific about what she had. She had that in her, you know. And we looked over some things, you know, and there was like styles and performance, and she had it down like, this is how I want to see the character, you know, and it fitted, you know, the scene. And I mean, I don't want to make things seem like we didn't have to do anything. Things just happened. But in a certain way, again, I give credit to the actors and the performers and the sort of environment we created that make them really want to find the character, you know, and be the character. And the things that they did that we improved of, they just, you know, made it theirs. It's just, you know.
Well, it's interesting because at a certain point, the movie feels like it's become almost magical with the three of them in that place. And that certainly, as you said, the casting of that house itself and finding that place. But also, I mean, there's a great scene because a lot of this movie deals with people we don't see. And I want you to talk about how you sort of like put the actors in the room so we get to, because we kind of feel the presence of these kind of unspoken or these other people. And I want to talk to you about that because that seems to be like a really daunting thing, that one wrong turn is like silly and we don't believe it, but that never happens here.
Well, there's several scenes where James Rose is fighting the ghost, the demon, his demon. And if you're not careful, it can be kind of hokey in a way. So you have to make little things that where the audience feel, well, maybe there is something about this. Maybe it does exist. Because there's a scene where, not to give it away, but you know, he's wrestling this demon, and there's one scene where he throws him out the window, and there's this little gesture where, okay, but the leaves start to move, you know, and it's like, well, it's not only his illusion, but maybe we're in it too, you know, and so you see that movement, and then we hope that the audience will feel that he isn't totally out of his mind, but we're in it with him, you know, and so the things like that we had to sort of like deal with and try to make it work, because that was going to sell the whole thing about his perception of reality, you know, because it isn't far from being an illusion. It has some credibility to it, you know.
Well, that's what makes that first scene so powerful for me, because you know it's almost like the Holy Ghost, or the Holy Spirit in church. I mean, if you go to certain kinds of church, you see that kind of thing happen before. You've seen it happen before your eyes, and it gives that first scene to this real power because it's playing with a lot of different kinds of things. And I just wonder what you liked about the material so much that it is all doing kind of several things at once, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think the thing what moved me about it was that, you know, you see people, particularly now in Los Angeles, homelessness, and people who are, it's getting worse and worse, you know. And I was on the subway once, and with this guy, I was in New York, in the subway, and this guy was a homeless person, and I was lying on stretched out on the subway seat, whatever, and this person started talking. I didn't realize that he was talking to me, you know, and he was saying that we were on the east side, and he was going to a hospital to try to get some medication, but they stopped giving him his medication, and so he had to find a way to get treated, and so he was talking. He said, "You know what I had to do?" He said, "I can go and ask him for my medication. They would give it to me." He said, "But what I did was I went in there and I started talking about how I was going to kill some white people."
My.
And he said, yeah, and he said I couldn't get out the hospital. They got me in medicine when I was coming out the door. You know? And he went on and you know, what he said was very logical. I mean, it didn't make any, but it worked, you know. And it's the same way you find it in your life in a certain way. We were making a film, we were in this film, and there was a guy breaking into one of the crew members' car, and they'd called the police several times. They still wouldn't come. And so finally, someone says, "Look, just tell him there's a black man robbing, you know, a white woman out here." And they were like, "Dum." And so, I mean, you get this, I mean, reality and things like that is really warped, but there is some advantage to, you know, to think in those terms, because it gets things done in a certain way. And so, and so so I looked at this guy, you know, and he looked like, gave this look like I gave some good advice. Now it's yours to use, you know, and
Because you say that there's a chilling moment in the movie where, I don't want to give too much away, but the word deinstitutionalization is used. They just sent the chill through me, because now it's something that happens all the time, and much speedier than it happened for characters in this movie. And in a lot of ways, this movie feels like it really lives for me. I think that's why it stuck with me so much, just because it's, in big and small ways, it's about people having to cope with, again, having the rugs pulled out from under them. And so much of what you do is about how we cope with that, how our sense of security is taken away, and how we have to sort of make that work in our homes. And this is just another example of you doing this so beautifully. But as you were telling a story about seeing the homeless gentleman on the subway, I sort of think about how often characters that you have in your movies are dealing with having what should be a secure life taken away from them. And I wonder what makes you revisit that so often as a storyteller, because you do it so beautifully.
well, all these oddities and strange things happen all around you, you know, and you try to understand,
You might.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're right.
No, you try to understand, you know, what's going on around you in life. Like, because I had a speech impediment, I had to sort of like, excuse me, get this thing. Sorry. No, I had to. I was never really engaged in something because of my speech impediment, so I had to stand back and listen, because and so it gave me a different perspective. You know, I used to, for some reason, I was always, maybe because it took me a while to process things, I don't know what it is, but in particular looking at people, because, you know, I always admire people who can talk and be fluent, you know, and so I studied them a lot, you know, and try to get, you know, their psyche or whatever it is. People do things differently, and so you try to put it in some sort of context and make sense out of it, you know. So because I come in a neighborhood, I grew up in South Central, so there's lots of odd things happening going on, things that I had to sort of adjust to and so forth to make sense out of. And anyway, I guess that's why I'm the way I am. I guess I don't know, I see things the way I do.
Makes all the sense in the world. Yes, thank you. We have time, I guess, for a couple of questions. We have time for